Okay, sorry it's taken me so long to get back to all of you about your questions. I actually went through as I was watching your intro videos and typed them all out. So I've got a list, and some of them were repeated. So I'll try not to repeat myself. Um, just want to kind of give you a better overview and try to answer those questions you asked in your introductory videos. And know that a lot of your questions are really awesome questions. They're really good. They're all things we're going to cover at some point in the semester. I just kind of want to set the stage for that now. So, I had several people ask, what do you do when an issue can't be solved? And I think in conflict, it's super, super important to remember that you are the only thing you can control. You can try to set the tone, you can try to set the stage, you can try to behave well so that the person you're interacting with wants to mirror you. But remember, at the end of the day, you can only control you. That's all you got. So, some of these tools that we're going to talk about and that you're going to get to learn about are specifically to help you be the best you and control you when you're faced with a situation that doesn't really make sense and you can't seem to back someone out of their conflict mentality. So um, there are obviously several options for when something can't resolve, and we'll get into all of this in more depth. But there are also times when conflict shouldn't be even approached. Situations of violence, situations of um, you know, potential violence, anything that could incite that sort of if you're not prepared, and you're gonna be putting yourself at risk, sometimes conflicts are best to move past in a different way. Um, Therapy, talking to a friend, getting right with whatever it is with yourself, to be able to move past that, um, and definitely remove yourself from those situations. But we all face, and I heard a lot of you talk about things like politics, in which we, you know, are all over the place, and people in your lives are all over the place, and they're very different than you. And these are people you love and respect and want to have a relationship with. And so the importance of the relationship is high, but you feel very strongly about your beliefs. You have very strong convictions and don't want that to be minimalized. So those can be some of the most difficult conversations. Several people ask, like, is it okay to walk away? Is it okay to agree to disagree? And I think it absolutely is, as long as your respect is maintained, right? That you have to be treated with respect. You want to treat others with respect. So when those things come in conflict, sometimes it is best to walk away. Sometimes it is best to agree to disagree. I think probably one of the I mean, it's not the only reason, but a big part of my husband and I's marriage and the ability to make it to 22 years together has been there are some things that we absolutely don't agree on, but we have agreed to disagree. Neither of them none of those things that we disagree about are deal breakers. So, deal breakers are what I call something that would make you not want to be in the presence of another person ever. Um, for me, one of those things would be adultery, cheating. Um, we've never had that issue in our relationship, so I'm really grateful for that. But there are lots of things that we don't specifically agree on, but we've been able to either reach some sort of collaborative agreement, compromise in some cases, and or just agree to disagree. Let's see. A few people said they wanted to learn how to manage conflict both personally and professionally, and I think that's really admirable. Someone else asked if um, if it was different in terms of a romantic relationship versus a friend relationship versus a professional relationship, remember, we're always coming back to you. You are still the center of everything in your life. You're the common denominator in all of your relationships. So I believe that we don't change as much situationally. There may be times when a professional conflict is very different than a personal conflict, but we feel a lot of the same things: anger, hurt, fear, betrayal, um, feel minimalized, feel marginalized, like all of those things you can feel in any of those relationship settings. So for me, the tools I use don't differ from personal to professional to intimate. Like none of those change. Um, the thing that changes most for me is how I'm able to control myself. So clearly, my husband is one of my most important relationships, and so are my children. So I am a huge, huge family person. So for me, it can be hardest to control me when I am in conflict with one of them. So I don't think it changes from setting to setting, though. Um, so someone else asked how they stay tough and get what they want while remaining empathetic and seeking solutions for both sides. Um, it can be really hard, and I think in some respects you don't want to necessarily think of it as standing tough as much as you are worth fighting for. You are worth, your feelings are worth, your opinions are worth standing up for. And so that conviction and the ability to not necessarily fight for yourself, but stand firm in what you need, um, doesn't really doesn't really remove any empathy from the situation. Um, Consider that your self-worth is just as important as someone else's. And so when we're engaged in conflict, this goes back to separating people from problems. The conflict you're having with your parent or with your significant other or your best friend or your roommate or a professor or your boss or someone who reports to you at work, in all of those situations, you still matter. They still matter. There's a problem that needs to be resolved. So, as we get deeper into some of these books, there will be a lot of talk about methods to do that. And one of them talks about stepping to someone's side because we often think of conflict in a face to face confrontational sort of setting. So, if we can, in our minds, physically remove ourselves from that face to face and step to someone's side, and face the problem together, then the problem is what we're trying to address. And neither me nor the person that I'm having a conflict with are necessarily at fault or to blame. Now we're going to talk about blame and taking responsibility in this class too, and sometimes we have to. Um, but even when we need to apologize or someone needs to apologize to us, we can still step to their side and confront the problem together. Um, lots of lots of questions about how to just an overall better approach to conflict, how to mediate better. Um, Someone wants to be more consistent and manage conflict more efficiently. Um, I don't know. For me, conflict doesn't isn't necessarily an efficient process. It's messy because people and feelings are involved, right? And um, at the end of the day, people people cause problems. And um, I had someone once tell me it doesn't matter how much you love or admire or respect someone, they will disappoint you. Something will happen that will be a disappointment. Something will happen that will generate a conflict. And when I think about it, like, even if it's been in a very small way, that's not been untrue. And that doesn't mean I feel like people are out to disappoint us. I just feel like everyone has their own set of stuff. And that's not always like, I'm not talking about just baggage. That there's also lots of good stuff wrapped up in people. So we have to take sorry, both that good and that bad, and just um kind of approach people, as people and not as problems. Sorry, back to people and problems. Um, we're going to talk about sympathy versus empathy in this class. There's a very brief video. If I can figure out how to do it within this, I'll probably do it in the Thursday lecture. If not, I'll post it with it, because sympathy and empathy are totally different things. And often we say we're sympathetic. What we're really trying to be is empathetic. So getting that terminology square in our minds help us be more empathetic when we understand it fully. Um, someone asked if conflict will ever fully be resolved, and I do not believe that it will be until there are no people. I think we are inherently different, even when we can be the same in so many ways. And so differences will always cause conflict. Now, I also believe that that's like a really great thing because it would be super boring for me if everyone was just like me. Um, it's the reason that I don't think conflict is a bad word. I had to work really hard at that, because while I've never been like a super avoider, I've been a very big compromiser. I'm actually going to take the conflict styles assessment before class tomorrow too, so we can talk about mine and those of everyone who's submitted theirs. I'm actually working on putting everyone's all 5 and their percentages so that I can do some graphics for a class, um, for your class, but it'll be in a video presentation, just give you kind of the breakout of who's in class with you. And one of the reasons I do that is because I teach a little differently dependent on the styles in the class. So what I'm seeing so far is not a lot of people with high percentages in computers. I'm seeing a lot more people who have high percentages of avoider, I believe problem solver and compromiser. So that's usually a different mindset. It's usually a different approach. And so while we'll talk about all 5, we might spend more time or have more questions in the areas people fall most. Um, so someone asked if or what the most effective conflict management technique is. And what I will tell you is there's a million out there. You can study them all, and that will be different for everyone. We're all different people. So try them on, just like you would a good pair of shoes. I like shoes. Um, and see how they work for you. You will find something that works best for you. And once you find one thing that works for you, you will find other things that work for you. And you will continue to build your toolbox so that you have different tools to pull out in different situations. But I guarantee you, there is one thing that's most comfortable. And right now, what you're looking for is the comfy slippers, the things that you can most easily adapt in your life right now. And, somewhere, sometime down the road, you'll be facing a situation and you'll remember something in this class and you'll try that on. And, that might be your tennis shoes. And, at some point, y- you might find a great pair of boots that also work well. And then, who knows? For me, I like heels. A pretty pair of heels is super nice. So, building the shoes in your closet is kinda like building your tools for conflict, and some of you can relate to my shoe theory, and some of you will have something of your own, but you're looking for the one thing that makes sense right now that you can deploy most easily in your own life, and then learn some other things that you can incorporate after that one's comfortable. Um, all too often, we try to jump into conflict management and think that we're gonna be really great, and the thing that I miss most about seeing you in person and being in class is the role playing we would do. People are super uncomfortable and hate role plays, but I guarantee you practice makes it better. I would strongly encourage you when you face your next conflict situation, you find a trusted advisor of some sort to role play with you. Talk through what you think the other person might respond and how you might respond to that. Because I guarantee you, in a situation that you are more prepared to face, that you've already thought of some of the responses and some of the things you might say, and even have the person who's role playing with you respond negatively so that you can manage and walk through that. It's incredibly helpful, and I can't tell you how much I miss that aspect of our class. We may, on some Tuesdays, try to throw you into breakout rooms to do some quick role plays. And you might want to think about it in your groups as you're thinking about what you want to do as a group project, because sometimes creating a role play can be the most helpful thing for everyone else to see, because then everyone else is also thinking, I would have done that differently. Oh, that was really great. I'm going to try that. So, being a resource for each other is part of what I love about the class, and that's why I miss being face to face. It is what it is. We are where we are. So, this one's a big one. How do you approach conflict with someone who has positional authority? And coming from the perspective of a leader and a person who's been a manager in many positions and had that positional authority, um, I feel very differently about it than a lot of people do. I If I am not approachable, I shouldn't be leading. I shouldn't be a manager. I shouldn't be in charge of the careers and lives of other people. So, people in positional authority who make you feel less than, who make you feel um, like they're unapproachable, I don't think they're very good leaders. Um, but you do have to approach that differently, right? You have to approach that in a much different manner than you might with your best friend. And the best thing I can say when faced with positional authority is know know that person well. Um, and I don't mean like on a personal level. Watch their mannerisms, see how they respond to others when they have questions or concerns. Gather a lot of data. And one of the things that can help most in positional authority discussions can be asking questions. So when you prepare for that conversation, think about ways in which you can ask them to help you be better at your job or ask them to help you correct this situation. Because in a lot of cases, people in positional authority who make you feel uncomfortable about talking to them, um, they want you to play to their vanity a little, and that's okay, especially if it helps you get through. Um, we're going to talk. There's questions about how to navigate conflict, how to bring up things that are bothering you. We're definitely going to talk about that a lot. Somebody asked how they can be assertive without being a jerk. And I think that goes back to separating people from problems and knowing that you can only control yourself. Standing up for yourself and what you believe in doesn't mean you're a jerk. It means you're a person and you have thoughts and feelings. And that's totally cool. Everybody gets to have those. So when I say you matter, you need to remember that you matter. And I mean it, you matter big time. You're really important. You you have no idea how important you are. So Remember, when you need to approach a conflict of any kind, when you need to bring up something that makes you less than 100% comfortable, that you're worth it too. Give yourself the same credit and latitude that you would give your best friend or someone that you love deeply. Um, what triggers a person in conflict? That can be so many things. It can be nothing. It can be a bad day. And we're going to talk about how maybe when someone is cranky or has had a horrible day is not the best time to approach them about a conflict, but it doesn't mean you can't start setting the stage. Um, there's a lot of questions about connections to psychology, connections to brain stuff. So this Thursday will be there will be some stuff about neuroscience in there. I think there's definitely connections to psychology because basically what we're doing, and I don't think this is a bad word either, but what we're doing is learning to manipulate conversations. Some see that as manipulating people. I don't think it is. I think we're learning um, the art of skillful manipulation to help turn conversations around for the better of both. So, I don't think manipulation is a bad word, just like I don't think conflict is a bad word because I think they can both be, um, they're both necessary in some cases to get where we need to go. Um, someone asked if conflict is a good or bad thing, and I think back to I had a really great professor in my master's program. His name's Luke Fowler. He still teaches here. He's great. If you ever get the opportunity to meet Luke, he's from the South and he has an accent and he's hilarious. But Luke always says, "Nothing is either good nor bad, but thinking makes it so." We assign good and bad values to things. They aren't inherently good and bad in and of themselves. We decide whether something is good or bad. So I don't see conflict as a bad thing. I think a healthy level of conflict is a good thing. But I know there are a lot of people who feel very differently than me about that. Um, let's see what else. How do you manage conflict when the other person is not responsive? This gets back to you can only control you. And sometimes you can't make people talk to you. Sometimes they're just not going to. Sometimes now is not the time, and sometimes never is the time. So Um, the thing I can tell you is when you try and they're not responsive, and you try again and they're still not responsive, and you try that third time and they're still not responsive, you will still feel better about it because you tried. May not make sense right now, but think of that next time someone is not responsive. Doesn't mean give up, doesn't mean don't try anymore. Just means that you only get to control you and someone doesn't have to respond to you, but the fact that you tried and that you tried in meaningful ways will make it better for you, even if that conflict is never resolved, even if that relationship deteriorates. Because remember, you matter. Um, stopping conflict from escalating. I think we have a whole week on that. Um, It can definitely be a situation, and we're gonna talk about some tools and tricks to de-escalate. That's definitely linked both to brain and psychology stuff, and we'll talk more about it that in that week too. Lots of, approaches to dealing with conflict. That's what this class is all about. Um, I had several questions about resolving conflict between generations, and I actually took a class on generations in the workplace specifically, but it was a conflict management class. And the truth is that there's a song by Mike and the Mechanics called "The Living Years." If you know it at all, the lyrics are every generation blames the one before, and all of their frustrations come knocking at your door. Um, it's so true because when you look at generations historically, every one of those generations faced the same things, the same sorts of conversations that, now I think we're still talking about millennials, but Gen Z will face uh, every generation because they grew up in a different world, they grew up in a different environment, and they have a much different approach to life, has had conflict with the generation or 2 or 3, that came before them, and that's because those generations have lived through those years and think they know better and often feel like they should be able to you know, control how that generation works, but I think there's beauty in difference. So, the fact that, um, Gen Z and millennials and my generation, Gen X, and baby boomers all cohabitate in workspaces these days. I think that there is great value in both wisdom of baby boomers and, you know, maybe the Gen Xers. So my generation is actually called the bridge generation between baby boomers and millennials. And maybe that's why I like this kind of stuff, because I've always been kind of a natural manager of conflict. But um, I think I think millennials have so much really great stuff to offer, and my kids are Gen Z, and I see them doing great things and going out and doing better than my generation ever did. So, I think every generation has something to offer, and it can cause conflict, right? And especially when you're in those situations of positional authority in the workplace or dealing with your parents who feel very differently about things than you do. Um, and those are all things that we can learn to manage, but I don't necessarily think that managing conflict between generations is any different than managing conflict with anyone else with whom you have conflict. It may take a different approach, which is why you're going to learn multiple ways to approach it. Let's see. Someone asked if conflict can be de-escalated. I absolutely think it can, and I think we talked about that. Um, Someone asked if your conflict style changes significantly in different situations, and I think it can. Those of you who had percentages across conflict styles that were very close, you're going to be more mutable in those moments of conflict. So you may approach even the same person differently in different situations. So your conflict style, because your percentages are closer to center, are going to be more flexible than someone who is, a 93% problem solver. Their approach is always going to be to solve the problem. And we'll talk about some great things and some challenges with each of the conflict styles because they all have value. And knowing all of them and using all of them can be really effective. Um, Someone asked if all conflicts are resolvable, and um, I think I would love to say yes, but I don't know. Um, I think that, and this is just my soapbox, you're going to get it for approximately 30 seconds. I think that conflict management is something that we should be teaching at all levels of education, including preschool. And I think that until we raise generations of people equipped to handle conflict, not all conflicts are resolvable. Um, Someday when you have a few minutes or you're like stuck somewhere, watch William Ury, watch a TED Talk, any of his speeches. He is an incredible man and he truly believes that all conflict is resolvable. And he is incredibly skilled in negotiation. He's been at it a lot longer than me. Uh, and I don't disagree with anything he says. But when I see what most of us are faced with on a day to day basis, it's hard to think that all of it is resolvable. And I truly don't believe, with the small percentage of people who even look at or study or try to get into conflict management and learn some skills and techniques until we have more people learning and growing and thinking these things together, I think we will continue to struggle. Let's see. Um, Someone asked about the easiest way to compromise, and we'll talk about all of the types of response to conflict, and compromise is one of them. But for now, I'm just going to tell you to expand the pie. And remember that because we're going to talk about expanding the pie over and over and over. Um, so, a couple other things that we'll talk about through the year that address some of these questions. We'll talk about the golden rule versus the platinum rule, sympathy versus empathy. We're absolutely going to talk about why conflict isn't a dirty word. And we're going to talk about styles and approaches. And we're going to try some on just like shoes. And we're going to talk about, um, we're going to talk about so many things. So I really hope that I've answered at least some of your questions. I know that when you start this stuff out, it feels a little, um, well, I mean, if you're anything like me, you're a little uncertain right now and you don't know quite what to think or how to feel. Um, and, sometimes new pairs of shoes need some breaking in, but they can still be really great and really comfortable. It's just going to take a couple walks to make sure that they fit your feet well. Um, so, I think we'll definitely talk about you as the common denominator in all of your conflicts. And that's not to say that you were causing, um, but we all have conflicts in our life. So the only common denominator in all of your conflicts is you. So changing your perspective and helping you gain some tools and experience can also help change the outcomes of all the conflicts in your life. Um, I think I've talked about that. Let's see. Yeah, we have to be open to hearing the other side. We have to demonstrate the behavior we want to see in others. And remember, at the end of the day, there's only one thing you can control ever, and that's you. Um, this went a little longer than 30 minutes, but I hope you all watch it anyway because I'm sitting on my bed and it's really uncomfortable, but it's the only quiet spot in my house. So I will see you all tomorrow in class, and then I'll have another video to post for you for Thursday. Um, I'll just tell you now it's already done. I just have it scheduled to post on Wednesday. So um, good luck to all of you, and I'll see you tomorrow.